can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
Gets running loose. Can't wait. Put your seatbelts on and get ready for the ride.
Welcome into the official Jets podcast. Eric Allen here at One Jets Drive, joined by my man Quincy Enunwa. Before we get into a lot of topics, including the NFL schedule release queue, OTAs on the horizon for Aaron Glenn and company, I want to get your thoughts on rookie minicamp and the draft as well. And we might even go game by game and get your predictions for that schedule. We are presented by Kendra Scott. Game day and every day, score a jewelry touchdown with Kendra Scott. Shop fashion and fine jewelry fit for another winning season at your local store or kendrascott.com. Shine bright, do good with Kendra Scott. We are doing good with Q. What is up, my man?
Oh, man, I can't complain. Everything's well. I love coming back to the building. Brings me back, so those are always great memories.
All right, so from a player's perspective, when the schedule is released, do you pay any attention to it?
Just a little bit. Everybody's different. I'd say for myself, I think back to like 2016. We played the Chiefs and we played the 49ers, if I'm not mistaken. And those two games were important to me because I grew up a Chiefs fan and then my family's from California. So I'm like, okay, where am I going to see my family? So I just had to make sure I knew when that time was coming.
All right, you guys are creatures of habit, though. Do you ever look at the times of games or travel? Because for the Jets, from their perspective this year, 13 1 o'clock games, not many travel miles either. About half of them, one trip to London.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely a big part of it. I think you love the primetime games just because you get more eyes on you. But it's always good to get a 1 o'clock game. Then you get your nights, to recover, and it's not so late, right? So you get to play the game, you get to do your work, and then you get to go home and enjoy yourself, obviously after a win.
So what was your game day prep like if you knew a 1 o'clock game was on the horizon? Because that's where the Jets are going to start, at the friendly confines of MetLife Stadium, week 1 against the Steelers, and then week 2 against the Buffalo Bills.
It was pretty simple. Obviously I would wake up. I tried to wake up before breakfast so I can kind of get my mind ready for the day. Go down and get our breakfast, go over any notes I need to have, watch a little bit of film. And then from there, I'm at the stadium probably as early as possible. If it's an away game, then you have certain buses that will leave at certain times. But if it's a home game, you could just drive there. So I try to get there pretty early because
What's pretty early?
I want to say like 10 maybe, around there, 9:30, just so I can kind of – what I like to do is get here as early as – you saw me today. I got here pretty early. I don't always like to do that.
Yeah, we were taping at 9:30 today. Q's already on the staircase at 8:15, saying, where the hell is everybody?
Yeah, so, I like to get early and just kind of get comfortable. So I like to walk on the field, just kind of look at the bleachers, look at the sun. Like, I don't know. I like to ground myself in the place that I'm at.
All right, so holistically, 13 1 o'clock games, 2 primetime games for the Jets.
Yeah.
Your thoughts in terms of the change and maybe what the league expects from the team this year?
To be honest with you, let's just talk about AG. I think this is exactly what he wants, right? Like, he's not looking at a season like we've had the last couple of years where it's so many primetime games, so much attention. I think this is exactly what they're looking for. Less eyes on them so they can just kind of work, right? Those 1 o'clock games will have just kind of the local people and anybody that wants to tune into a Jets game. And so for the team, it's like, okay, we don't have as much expectation, but that's okay because we can come from the bottom and really show what we're capable of.
How about the storylines there in week 1? The Jets and the Steelers have never met in a season opener. Justin Fields is new here. The QB1 for the Green and White. He signs in the offseason. He was the starter for the Steelers last year, appeared in 10 games, started 6, but after leading the Steelers to a 4-2 start, they gave the keys to Russell Wilson. He signs. Fields signs with the Jets in free agency, and now his first start with the Jets comes against the Steelers?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of storylines there, obviously. I think the biggest one for him will be the emotional part of it. I think you think about this is his first game as a starter for the New York Jets, and it's against your former team. I don't think there's any animosity for him against the Steelers, but I know from what he's spoken about, they didn't let him be his best self at quarterback, right? There was a little bit of they didn't have confidence in him to be the starter. They didn't give him the reins to just go ahead and do everything he wanted to do. So I think he wants to go out there and show, like, this is what I'm capable of. And one thing I like about AG is that he's putting a lot of confidence in his coaches. So we're going to see hopefully the best version of him because they're going to coach him hard.
What do you think Fields is capable of? This is his third team. Obviously drafted by the Chicago Bears, number 11th overall back in 2021, then traded to the Steelers. This is his fifth season coming up.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy to think about that. But I think, we've seen what he's done, right? He's done something that maybe only, I think, 2 other quarterbacks have done in the running game as a quarterback. So that's amazing, right? His legs are elite, right? Now we get to see a little bit more of his arm. I know that he can throw the ball. He has some issues with accuracy at times, but I think what we're going to see here is the ability to add in the play action pass, right? So that'll give him the opportunity to make those quick passes. Like you think about like Tua, right? Like their offense is so quick. He's an accurate quarterback, but they also don't make him think too much. It's just kind of getting the ball out of there. I kind of want to see that a little bit with him and allowing him to use his legs, really be a dual threat, because then it'll kind of put a little pressure on the defense.
Do you like the Jets overall starting at home, though, in front of their fans? That atmosphere is going to be crazy because those Pittsburgh fans travel pretty well themselves. That's a national brand, Jets, Steelers.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think that first home game, or that first game being a home game, is deep because, you want to get that fan base kind of on your side early, right? And so when you can get that, when you go out on the field and everybody's cheering for you, there's so much more excitement. Now, on the other side of it, I do love playing the villain. I don't mind going to an away game and everybody's kind of booing you. But it's something about everybody cheering you as an entertainer that feels pretty good.
All right, who's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers starting quarterback in Week 1? Huh? Is it a guy who started 17 games for the Jets last year?
It could be. I mean, I wouldn't put it past him. But again, I don't know. It's hard to tell. Like, you really don't know what he's thinking. Obviously, we've dealt with that. So we are going to see. It's getting down to the wire, right? He's starting to start OTAs. You kind of want to be in there, getting used to your guys, getting used to the system. So I guess we're going to find out if he goes there. Otherwise,
Mason Rudolph.
Exactly. That would be the next guy.
I love it from the perspective of Fields against the Steelers.
Yeah.
The Muji Glenn era gets underway at home. Maybe Aaron Rodgers is facing his former team, the Jets. But how about the Jets' vastly improved offensive line? You got some depth pieces. You draft Armand Membu, who's going to be competing for that right tackle spot against a defensive line that starts with T.J. Watt, one of the better defensive players in the National Football League. Cam Hayward's still there. They drafted Derek Harmon in the first round as well. Yeah. This is a defense that gets after you, and the Jets' offensive mentality is going to be completely different than it was last year when they were 32nd in the National Football League in terms of rush attempts. The Jets are going to try to win at the line of scrimmage, and the Steelers play bully ball themselves.
Yes, and one thing that we didn't talk about is, last year that wasn't the best game for the Jets against the Steelers. But one thing I do remember was Garrett Wilson had a pass that, bounced off his chest. I know he's going to want to come back. And now he's got his guy at quarterback. Exactly, right, exactly. Yeah. He's going to want to come back and kind of prove that, this is not, you guys didn't play me at my best self, right? And now I have my guy from college. That synergy there is going to be amazing for him. I think when you think about having a guy that you got a chance to really become who you were in college. Now you get to go out here and show that this is who he's capable of. I think he's going to want to show that Justin Fields is that guy as well. So it's going to be a great showing for that first game.
The Steelers got a big weapon on the outside in the offseason, DK Metcalf, but then they just traded George Pickens to the Cowboys, huh?
Yeah. You thought it was going to be a little 1-2 punch, but I guess they got tired. I mean, listen, I don't know Pickens personally, but there's a lot of talk on the outside about his attitude and stuff like that. So we know that Tomlin is a guy that can deal with some personalities, but it seems like they kind of he reached the end of his leash, I guess.
All right, so quickly we're gonna go through every game, and then I'm gonna ask you for a record prediction.
Yes, let me make sure I see this. Go ahead.
All right, so second game, Buffalo. That's a team that's won the division the last 5 years. Josh Allen coming off an MVP type season. So, from your perspective now in the media world, does that put a little bit of extra on that home opener where you like to get at least one in your pocket before you head to the road in week 3 against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Not saying you can't beat the Bills.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
Buffalo on paper, probably the more complete team than the Steelers.
And you know what's wild about that is last year there was a lot of question marks on Buffalo, especially in the receiver room. Like they don't have anybody. They just lost Diggs, and those guys stepped up. So now they have Elijah Moore. It's going to be a challenge. You think about the 2 games that the Jets played against them last year. Wasn't exactly the best. Josh Allen did some ridiculous things. So you definitely want to get that win. It's a divisional game, but the first game is definitely going to be a win you're going to want because that second game is going to be a battle.
Yeah, the Bills have won the last 5 AFC Eastern titles. Week 3,
Yeah.
going to Tampa. So Todd Bowles down there, former Jets head coach, he was Aaron Glenn's positional coach, both here with the Jets and later with the Dallas Cowboys.
Wow.
How about this, Q? Tampa is the only team in the NFC who's made the playoffs in each of the past 5 seasons.
Wow.
So quietly, just very consistent down there. And if you're looking for a great story in terms of a quarterback reclamation project, how about Baker Mayfield? So Jets fans can look at Mayfield and say, hey, maybe we got a different type player here with the physical skill set. But Justin Fields is 26. His story's not over
At all.
by any means.
At all. And I think that AG is definitely looking at that, right? He's looking at a guy like Baker Mayfield. Obviously, we talk all the time about Darnold. We talk all the time about Geno. But Mayfield is another guy, and I think that's something that you want to look at and say, hey, listen, he was coached this way. We put him in an environment where he was successful. We gave him all the tools he needed, and they're continuing to give him tools, right? They just drafted Emeka Egbuka. So, I think the Jets are looking at that mold and want to do the same thing for Justin Fields.
Interesting challenge right away for the Jets secondary because you mentioned Egbuka. Mike Evans just produces year in, year out. Crazy.
Yeah, we're in the same draft class, so to see him still going. I talked to him when we did the joint practice, so it's just cool to see him continuing to be elite at a high level, consistency, like the model of consistency. So,
Week 4, Monday Night Football, Miami Dolphins.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at the division and saying, hey, New England spent a lot of money in free agency.
Yeah.
A lot of people really like their draft class. They got Mike Vrabel, so they should be seen as an ascending team.
Yeah.
I like what the Jets are doing here. Where does Miami kind of fit in inside the division right now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, they've been in a little bit of a question mark with Tua's health, right? So we're gonna see. I know that there's another thing. Did they get rid of Jalen Ramsey or not? I know that was a question mark, right? So that's another
But
part
he could
there.
be traded. That's right.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. Tyreek Hill. So, they've got a lot. They got a cloud over them, So we're going to see how that looks going into training camp and all those different things. How does their team look this season? It's going to be different. It's definitely going to be different. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge for them to be the team that we've seen at least 2 years ago.
Yeah, and what's going to happen with Tyreek Hill now that he's on the back half of his career when you're talking about 30 years old? They did take Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle out of Michigan there in the first round. They'll try to get some players back that they lost to injury last year. They've always been very competitive when Tua's in the lineup. There's no doubt about that. Monday Night Football early in the year, from a player's perspective, what do you have to do to get yourself ready for South Florida? Is anything?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, because
it helps as a night game.
Heat. It's a different heat, but yes, the night game is going to be helpful. I love the primetime games, honestly. Those are the opportunity for, I always say this, like NFL players, we're entertainers, right? This is an entertainment business. And so when you go out there knowing that all eyes are on you, there's a different level that comes out of you. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun to play as well.
So 2 division games in the first 4. You got Buffalo at home. You got the road game against the Miami Dolphins in week 4. Okay. Let me throw a couple games at you.
All right, let's do it.
America's team.
Yeah, Dallas.
The Dallas Cowboys coming back. Dak Prescott returning from injury. He's an elite player when he is healthy. We mentioned Pickens before. They got C.D. Lamb, so we got a partner for C.D. Lamb. Brian Schottenheimer now, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys.
I saw that.
So it sets up like this. Miami Monday Night Football, short week home against Dallas, and then you're going across the pond where you're going to be the home team against the Denver Broncos at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And Denver is a team who's made the playoffs who made the postseason last year.
Yeah.
So, first 6 games, you're playing 4 teams that made the postseason last year.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh in week 1, Buffalo in week 2, Tampa in week 3, and then finally the Broncos in week 6. The other 2 games are at Miami, a divisional rival,
Yeah.
who went 8-9 last year, and then the Cowboys, who have a lot of talent themselves. So for me, this 6-game stretch
Yeah.
is awfully difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that'll be something you talk about in the locker room in the meeting rooms is that, listen, guys, like these are some playoff teams. These are teams that made it to the playoffs last year. So we kind of get to gauge who we are this year. Obviously, we have a whole new regime from the GM to the head coach to the coaches in general. But you kind of want to see, okay, how do we measure up to these teams that know what it looks like to be in the playoffs?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So after that game against the Broncos, you come back home and you face the Carolina Panthers, and that's followed by games against the Cincinnati Bengals, the Cleveland Browns, and did I skip our bye here? Then you have a Thursday night. Actually, after the Bengals, you have your bye. So
Yep.
the week 9 bye. So it's Carolina followed by the Cincinnati Bengals, who, listen, Joe Burrow and those receivers.
Yeah. Just pay those guys too.
Yeah.
Whew.
You got to get after them defensively, though.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
As far as the Jets are concerned.
That's why you drafted a corner and brought in another corner, right?
Yeah.
So, you are ready for the test this year.
Yeah. But offensively, when you're looking at the Cincinnati Bengals, I mean, the way you envision the Jets right now, and I'm looking ahead to week 9 on the schedule. I know it's crazy.
I know.
But I'm just saying from a philosophical perspective, offensively, what do you think they want to be?
To be honest with you, I think they do want to look like Detroit. I think they're kind of going in that mold. When you think about the draft, when they drafted Arian Smith, I knew they wanted a speed guy. They wanted a burner. They didn't have anybody like that on the roster. And now Detroit had a guy in Jameson Williams who's a little more than just speed, but he does have the speed, and that's something that they didn't have on the roster. So they want to look similar to that. You have 3 great backs. Detroit had 2 really good backs, so it's very much in that mode. The one big difference will be the quarterback and his ability to move. Now, how are they going to switch there? Tanner Armstrong is going to have a little bit of a challenge because I don't think he's had a quarterback that can move like him, but that's a good challenge to have, So I'm excited to see how they can incorporate that.
Do you like Fields as far as his opportunities in the play action game if you get the run game going? Because that's where Detroit completely excelled.
Yeah.
Where they started dominating the line, pushing guys off the line of scrimmage, and then everybody was playing run, and they go up top.
Yeah, exactly. And one other extra piece that they had was, and I talk about this repeatedly, is that they were a big yak team too. So, you get that play action pass, and if you can't go deep, if you can get it to somebody in the short, shallow routes, you give an opportunity to make a big play. They've got some guys that can do that for you. So it should be a pretty big year. I really want to see how Malachi Corley steps up this year, right? Like being a draft pick last year, not getting his opportunities. This is an offense that is kind of catered to his skill set. He's not an Amon-Ra St. Brown receiver, but he can at least look at that model and say, look, this is how I want to play.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating because this is not the coaching staff that was here when he was drafted.
Not at all. That's always tough.
But, he basically had a redshirt year last year, second offense in as many years, but we should not forget about him when we're talking about the receivers. Okay, so after the bye, you got Cleveland at home. You have a road game against the New England Patriots. That's Thursday night.
The New Look Patriots.
And then you're coming back 10 days later, and you face the Baltimore Ravens. So that's going to be a tough 2-game stretch on the road.
Yeah, definitely. In Cleveland, we don't even know, what they're going to look like at quarterback.
Is it going to be Shedeur Sanders? Is it going to be Joe Flacco?
I know. Now, I think when you look at the roster, I would like to see Shedeur Sanders, but we don't know what's going to happen in that building. They got a lot of guys there. But
they got a stout defense, Myles Garrett.
Well, they've had a great defense for a while, so that's no question there. New England is a new team. Stephon Diggs at that point will probably be healthy enough to beat Stephon Diggs. So that'll be a different way. They'll have another weapon for their quarterback, and then Baltimore is Baltimore. So that's a tough stretch there.
Yeah, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson, he was not the MVP last year, but
Yeah.
he easily could have been the MVP. And you're talking about a guy who, man, a dual threat. They just re-signed King Henry in the backfield. They continue to load up on defense. I like that draft pick of Malachi Starks. One of the tougher places to play
Yeah.
in the National Football League. You mentioned Diggs before with New England coming back from injury.
Yeah.
Do you like that pickup for the Patriots?
I think it's a good safe pick. I think that you want to give your guy as many weapons as possible. He ended up playing pretty well down the stretch last year. They started off I think with Brissett, and then he came in. He showed himself. He showed that he's an adequate quarterback. So you give him some more weapons. I think that was one thing that was kind of missing for them last year. They didn't really have any weapons back there. So now he's got some receivers, or he's got a receiver, and then I think they picked somebody else up as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did. I mean, they made a ton of moves in the offseason. So
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about, you mentioned, we're talking about Diggs from a professional perspective on the field. He was at the Garden the other night with Cardi B. See that?
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah, Diggs getting front row treatment there.
Yeah,
at
in New
Madison.
York.
Yes,
we got to have our guys out there, man.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Fields has been to MSG a few
I
times.
saw that he threw the ball around a little bit.
Yeah. All right, so let's keep on rolling with the schedule here. We got through Baltimore, and now we're going to go to
ATL.
the ATL.
Yeah.
Narrowly missed the playoffs last season, but you bring them up here. That's a team that plays inside.
Yeah.
Here's a defensive coordinator that knows you very well, and Jeff Albrecht.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Knows the roster in and out at
Yeah.
this point, right? Outside of a couple guys. Yeah, no, that'll be an interesting game, especially because Ulbrich is coming back here, right? So there's a good chance. One thing that I noticed when he was the head coach is that he now kind of took over a little bit more of the defense, and they were blitzing a lot more than they usually had, whether that's because of the people on the roster at the time or because he felt like now he can do a little bit more of what he wanted to do. So, we're going to have to watch out for that. You got to make sure that you're prepared that this guy might bring the house a little bit.
Did you like Penix?
Yeah,
What you saw in the small samples last year?
I liked it a little bit. I liked what I saw. I didn't get to watch too much of him, but
He's got a nice arm.
he's from the same area as I am, so he already gets my support.
Drake London, he's coming on too.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so after Atlanta, we'll run through a few games here.
Yeah.
We're already into December. We got Jets at Jaguars. Travis Hunter. Is he going to play on both sides of the ball? Is he going to be seeing Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson?
I think you don't jump up to grab him if you're not going to use him in that way. Like they knew what they wanted out of him, so I think there's going to be I think we're going to see some crazy stuff.
I skipped the return matchup with Miami because I was going back and forth here.
Yeah.
So Atlanta, then you're home to Miami. That's a game where I circle on the calendar and say, you have to win.
Yeah.
You've won 2 of the past 3 at home against the Dolphins. You got them up here at your place in December.
Yeah.
It's a divisional matchup. I like holding serve at home inside the AFC East. I just look at that one as like, let's take care of business.
Definitely. And last year, you think about how they lost in the overtime. That's not something that you want to relive. So
They did win at home in the season finale.
Yeah. So you got a little chip on your shoulder. I didn't talk about that when we talked about them in week 4, but yeah, I think that's something to think about.
So Jags, they got a first-year head coach. So when you're talking about these next couple games coming up, December 14th and the 21st, and even the 28th, if you want to include that into the mix.
Yeah.
Liam Cohen, Kellen Moore,
Yeah.
Mike Vrabel, they're all first-year head coaches with their respective franchises. Obviously, Vrabel, a lot of head coaching experience with the Tennessee Titans, but these are all teams that are starting out or are in transition. I would argue that the Patriots are further along than the Jaguars, and the Jaguars further along than the Saints.
Yeah.
Saints
Just
look
lost
like
it,
on
bro.
paper that could be a team that has a top 5 pick next year.
Yeah. They just lost Derek Carr too.
Yeah.
When you look at it though, since we're talking about December, at that point, you think that you're a little bit more set in who you are,
Right.
who your identity is. So you would hope that you're not going through those, I got a new coach mistakes. At that point, I think everybody will kind of be solidified and like, this is who we are. This is our identity. But you never know, sometimes things just don't go the way you want throughout the whole season.
So you think Hunter's playing both sides?
I think he's going to get opportunities to play both sides. Is he going to play consistent like he did in college? That is ridiculous in the NFL. But
where do you think he's better?
Man, he's ridiculous as a corner.
Yeah.
Like some of the plays he was making, sitting in the, there was a couple plays that I watched him, and it's like that's like undefendable in terms of a quarterback being able to read that and know what to do. Right, the guy is so rangy. At receiver, I think it'll be easier for you to just kind of plug and play him than it is on defense. So I think personally, I would put him on defense and then just kind of plug and play him on offense.
Okay. And then Jets, Bills. That's the final game at Buffalo's old stadium, Highmark Stadium,
Oh, yeah.
after a 53-year run. So who knows what's going to be at stake at that point.
Yeah.
Last couple years, I don't even know if Buffalo's been playing for anything in that final week.
Right.
But you finish up the season with 2 divisional games. Prediction time.
Let's do it. So what do I think?
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I think about the season. I think about what the past few seasons, 7-10, 7-10, 5-12, with high expectations. And now this is a very similar roster. My hope is that they can get 9-8, right? I'm looking at 9-8. I think they'll just miss the playoffs, but I think if you talk about a guy like AG who comes from such a successful background in terms of being with the Lions, he knows what to expect. He knows what he wants to see. This roster has the ability to be good this first year, but I don't think they make a run through the playoffs just yet. Now, I've never been to the playoffs, right? So I really don't know what it looks like personally. But I think that it'll be tough to bounce back from where they were and just be that team right now.
But 9-8 would be something very big to build off of in year one of your program. And
absolutely.
When you're trying to instill a new culture.
Absolutely. And I think, you talk about the way the roster's built. One thing that I keep saying is that he's really expecting a lot from his coaches, right? He has a lot of confidence in his coaches. He wants everybody to get the most out of his players.
All right, save your thoughts there.
Yes.
Because we're going to take a break.
Yes.
And then we're going to come back and talk about the roster. The 2025 New York Jets schedule presented by JetBlue has landed from now until Monday, May 19th at 9:59 a.m. Visa cardholders have access to purchase single game tickets before they go on sale to the general public. Head to NewYorkJets.com/tickets now to lock in your seats at MetLife Stadium this season. Terms and conditions apply. Okay, Quincy, you just mentioned a very important point when we were ending our scheduled discussion. Aaron Glenn, the philosophy with his coaching staff.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Yeah, so I think he's expecting a lot from his coaches. He wants them to get the most out of his players. When you look at some of the guys, whether it be the free agent acquisitions, right? You talk about Cisco, you talk about Stevens, both guys that everybody was like, they didn't have great years last year, right? Then you talk about Aaron Smith in the draft, right? These are guys that that everybody's talking about their flaws, right? But AG sees something out of them, and I think every time he talks about them, he acknowledges maybe that they didn't do what they wanted to do last year, but also how talented they are underneath. And so that's big on coaching. I think about when I first got here, there was a lot of knocks on me not being able to catch the ball, all these not being able to run routes, right? And I think one thing that really helped me was good coaching, right? Coaches that believed in you, but also knew how to get the technique out of you. So, I think he's really crafted a coaching staff that can do that. Now, this first year will be the test to see if they're really capable of doing that, but I'm looking forward to it because I think you don't put this much confidence in these guys if you don't believe in them.
All right. You played receiver. You just mentioned some of your experiences. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about a couple guys. We don't have to go inside the entire group. We know what Garrett can do.
Yeah.
That 2 spots hanging out there, dangling out there for fans, and they've been circling that.
Yeah.
What do you see right now as far as roster construction? Who should be the two early on?
Yeah, so I mean, I think right now everybody's talking about Allen Lazard. He's been with the team longer. He's got more experience being in New York. But I think Josh Reynolds will push him. I think there's a reason why they brought him here. They know what he's capable of, and I think he is, of the two, more consistent at receiver, right? And that's one of the biggest things you want from your number two. Now, Allen Lazard had a good showing the first few weeks before he had that injury, and that was a pretty tough injury that he's not really spoken on. But it's tough to come back from that and then go ahead and play at a high level again. But I would say if he can bring that out and be consistent with that, and I think that's kind of been the biggest question with Allen Lazard is, are you going to be consistent? If he can do that, he'll be the number two. But right now, what I've seen from Josh Reynolds is he's capable of being at number two.
Well, talk to us like we're in the wide receiver room. What do you like about Reynolds' game?
Yeah, so I like one thing I've seen while watching this film is that he's got consistent hands. He's able to get open. On slant routes, you see him win multiple times. In the red zone, in the field, he's able to do that. He can go up and get the ball, right? He just doesn't have that exceptional speed, and he doesn't have that exceptional leaping ability. But he has those qualities that you need from a receiver that shows, like, okay, this guy is a consistent receiver. The other side of it, though, is he didn't have many special teams reps. And this is a guy that was not fully on a roster all year and still didn't have a lot of special teams reps. So are you going to be able to pull that out of him? If not, then it's tough to put him at the three. So that's why I say, okay, this guy is probably more of your two guy. He's able to run those routes for you. He's able to get open. He can stretch the field a little bit for you just so that Garrett Wilson can come underneath.
Arian Smith can stretch the field a lot for you.
Oh, yes. Arian Smith is another guy that can really stretch.
Okay, so what does Sean Jefferson
yep.
have to work on with him as he attempts to make this transition? Because we know what he can do
right.
and what he struggled with, because his speed, one of the faster guys in the National Football League probably entering his career. But at the same time, the big knock on him last year coming out of Georgia, we all know, was the hands.
Yeah, so this is what I'll say. I kind of did a little bit of research on him. And one thing is that all 4 years he was there, or at least the last 4 years, Georgia's had a different starting quarterback. So you don't really have a guy to grow with. And college is a position where some guys play receiver in high school for maybe 4 years, right? So you don't have a lot of background in the receiver position. So once you get to college, you really want to have somebody that you consistently grow with. He didn't have that. On top of the fact that he was also doing track, right? He was the All-American in track. So I think when you get a guy in the building that you can now say, look, we're going to focus on football, and this is your quarterback, really get to know him and feel comfortable with him, you can change everything. Again, I'll bring in my own experience. In college, my senior year, I had 3 different quarterbacks, right? So hands was tough for me because I felt like I had the confidence to catch it, but it's hard when you have 3 different quarterbacks and you have to have confidence in those 3 guys. Sometimes you lose confidence in yourself trying to, figure out what's going on. So that may or may not be happening to him, but I think with coaching, right, you can get these guys to focus on just being within yourself and stop worrying about all those other things, but also all the other technique things that come with running a route.
I had 2 questions about Fields. Do you like the dynamic that he played collegiately with Garrett? So there is a relationship already there. I know it was a few years ago when you go back to Ohio State, but it's not like, hey, we're meeting each other for the first time. And can you speak to a wide receiver quarterback dynamic? Because something struck me the other day that Aaron Glenn said about Justin.
Yeah.
He's just not going to speak. He will speak when he has to. Mm-hmm. And there's ways of communicating. So can you speak to that dynamic, those two?
Yeah.
And also what you want from a quarterback. That's your guy. That's the leader. Because what we're hearing about Fields is he's really well respected, and he can communicate quite well. But that doesn't mean he's the most vocal dude in the room.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one thing that I personally appreciate about a quarterback is somebody's going to get a little dirty. And a guy that's running the ball is going to have to get a little dirty, right? So I think that gains your respect, right? If you go out there, you don't see anything there, and you're going to go get those tough yards, and make those big plays, honestly, that, because everybody wants to see a football player, right? Old school, as much as you love having a quarterback that can go out there and sling it, I love to see guys that just love to play football, right? Whether or not you could throw it, you could go out there and play. So personally, that's a big plus for me. But in terms of just that relationship with having a guy from college, college is it's so different from even the NFL because you're just so close to people, right? Like, sometimes you be in the same dorms or all these different things. It's just you don't have your outside family. Everybody, your family is the team. So that's a relationship that goes long past college. So I think no matter what, they're going to have that relationship, and it's going to be good just to kind of go out there and have that together.
On the other side of the ball, quickly, you mentioned Cisco and Stevens before. They also took A.Z. Thomas in the third round out of Florida State. Do you like what Aaron's saying here in terms of what he wants from his cornerback? From a guy who played the receiver position, because we're seeing the prototype that he wants. He wants big dudes on the outside, physical, get their hands on people and can play man.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think when he on the draft call, he told him to choke guys or something like that, right? So, yeah, I mean, listen, he's got a guy that he can model his game after in Sauce, a guy that he can really learn a lot from. But one thing I saw about AZ is that he's a long, physical guy. He loves to get his hands on guys. And, he may not have the speed. I think that's one thing that people were talking about. But if he can slow down the route, that's huge. I mean, the biggest thing is timing with the receivers and the quarterback. So if you're messing up the timing because you're keeping the guy in position, in that space for a second, right? That turns off the timing unless the quarterback is like, forget it, F it ball, right? Like, I'm just going to throw it to my guy anyways. He's got to go to the next guy, So the biggest thing there with the corner position is the D line. That pass rush has to get to the quarterback and make it hard.
Yeah, but AG, in his time as defensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions, Steve Wilkes, throughout his career, they're both known for bringing the heat numbers. So those guys are going to be asked. They're going to be asked to play it on an island. Hey, you're alone there, Q.
It's the perfect combination there. I think as long as you have a good pass rush, I don't think speed is as important at the corner position if you can make sure you can just kind of mess things up.
Yeah. And lastly, before we get to OTAs. Is this the perfect spot for Sauce Gardner right now in his career, entering his fourth year? Because you mentioned Aaron's faith in the coaching staff and how they're going to coach people up. You not only have Aaron Glenn here, you have Steve Wilkes, whose specialty long before he was calling plays was the defensive backfield. You have Chris Harris here. You have Dre Bly here. Is this a perfect spot for Sauce right now?
Absolutely. I think for Sauce is going to be for him. I don't think that he has an ego, but it's just going to be about dropping any ego he has, because a lot of coaches will come in and they'll know that this guy, rookie of the year, right? All those different accolades that he has, and they'll be like, okay, I don't have to do too much. Some guys might push you, and as a guy that kind of has a lot of confidence in your ability, you have to be willing to be coached, And even though it's year 4, he's a vet, and so he knows exactly what he needs to do. He also has to be willing to say, hey, listen, I don't know everything. Let me go ahead and listen to what you have to say.
Let's take a quick break, and I want to get your final thoughts here on OTAs. The Official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry stories and so much more at kendrascott.com. OTAs coming up, man.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable how quickly the offseason has flown by. The Jets started the offseason with searches for a GM and a head coach. They hire Aaron Glenn, then Darren Muji. We see how they operate in free agency. The draft is behind us now. What are you looking forward to in terms of OTAs?
You kind of want to see, because I know OTAs are now where you can kind of go against the defense, right? So you get that opportunity to kind of see, how do I match up against the D? You've been able to watch them on the other field a little bit, but now it's like, okay, it's mano-y-mano. Let's get this little test in, especially those young guys, right? Like, you got a young corner as a receiver. You got a young corner over there, right? You've got some corners from another team, and Brandon Stevens, right? So you just kind of want to see how you measure up going into now OTAs and then training camp.
What's it like for a rookie coming in who was just drafted a couple of weeks ago, and now we're out here practicing in OTAs? It's
weird. I'm not going to lie to you. Like, when I throw myself back in that position, and when I think about when I was going through OTAs, we had Mike Vick out there, right? Like, it was just so many. We didn't have Reeve there yet, but we did have Cromartie out there, right? So guys that you grew up watching, right, that you were watching in college, now you're playing. Eric Decker was there too. So it's a little bit of like, okay, I got to get through that shock of like, okay, these guys are my teammates. And then it's like, okay, now let's work, right?
For real, even as a young buck, because
Yeah.
you dudes come out of college, a lot of times are like, hey, man, I'm the man.
Well, I was a 6th-round draft pick, so there was, what I mean? Like, I barely got drafted, So to me, it's like I got a lot to work, and we drafted 3 receivers that year. So those 2 guys ahead of me, I felt like they had the spot, right? I had confidence in my ability, but I also knew like I had a tougher road to make, So you kind of have to get through that, and then also obviously what I talked about before. But yeah, it's just work, You try your hardest to make sure you get the playbook down. Like every day is like, let me make sure I know what I'm doing because it's not a lot of reps.
Do you think it's advantageous for a guy like Mason Taylor to have a pops? Jason Taylor is a Hall of Famer in our league. Now he's coaching defensive line for Miami, of course, but giving him tips about what's to come.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the NFL loves pedigree, right? They love pedigree. So, I think ultimately there's a reason behind that. You get to see, like I imagine putting myself in Jason Taylor's shoes, right? And getting to give him so much game because I knew what the NFL looks like. I know what it feels like to make it to this point. So you just have a leg up above everybody else.
What did you think about Mason, what you saw on tape at LSU?
Oh, man, great hands. Great hands. That was one of the biggest things I saw was like when the ball comes to him, he sticks it. Now, he's not a guy, I didn't see like, he was making like contested catches, right? Like, but I saw that when the ball came to him, it didn't feel like even if he was open, that he was going to drop the ball. That was one of the biggest things, right? He not as much wiggle as a ball carrier, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with him because I know that he has some receivers around him, so he didn't get an opportunity. And college tight ends, like if you're not a guy where you're the feature guy, you don't really get to show who you are, not only as a pass catcher but also everything else. So
it's a fair point. I'm going to put you under the gun here, so to speak.
Yeah.
Before we get back to OTAs,
Let's do it.
Just thinking about you when you're talking about some of the receivers and what you like about Reynolds and Lazard coming back in the restructure and the Jets draft Mason Taylor. Who's going to be the target that gets the second most targets behind Garrett Wilson on this offense?
That's a good question. I mean, we have to see.
You don't have to have the answer right now.
Yeah, I don't think I do. I generally don't because I think what I need to do is I want to see OTAs. I want to see training camp. That's how I'll know, like, okay, who's really stepping up in this offense, right? Because again, we talk about quarterbacks and why didn't this guy perform well and why didn't this guy have success? And a lot of it is the scheme, right? So who's going to step up in this scheme? I can say what I think guys do outside of the scheme, but how do you show up when the plays are called and now it's your turn to make a play?
How are you approaching this spring if you are Fields? Because this is a different situation now.
Yeah.
You are the guy, and not only you are the guy who's coming in as a rookie with Chicago, where your head's kind of spinning, but you're the guy and you have a few years under your belt, and this organization is saying, hey, man, we're embracing you. We're giving you the rock, and we want you to be central command of the offense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's really had that since he first started in Chicago. And when you think about Chicago, he had multiple coordinators, right? So it was a lot of inconsistency there. So I think for him, it's got to be exciting to know that the team paid me to be the starter. They have confidence in me as a starter. They're getting me weapons. I think you approach it as though, this is a new start, right? Like you've seen guys be able, like we talked about Baker Mayfield, you've seen guys be able to do that. Now you got to go and prove that they did the right thing in bringing you here.
What do you expect from Aaron in terms of being on the grass? That's one thing that he's always talked about. He brings so much energy.
Yeah.
This is a guy who scouted you.
Yeah.
Just now he's going to have everybody here for the first time. You could see how energetic and lively he was here just for rookie minicamp.
Yeah.
But now OTAs is taking it up another step, and then our next step is training camp.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how he is as a coach. You got to see it a little bit on the Hard Knocks, kind of his attitude and mentality. Now, one thing we saw was he was barking back and forth with, who was it, Deuce Staley was the other, with the running back coach? Who was it? I forgot. But
was it Deuce?
I think somebody. I know it was a former Saints running back. But, yeah, man, so it'll be cool. Who's going to be his opponent now? Like, who's going to be barking back and forth with? Because that energy, that competitive fire, it's cool to see that it stayed there because that's something that you experience as a player. To him to have as a coach, I want to see if he still has it as a head coach.
Yeah. He said it during rookie minicamp. He said, you're used to having your group.
Yeah.
It's a secondary group in New Orleans from 16 to 20 under Sean Payton. Then he goes with Dan Campbell to Detroit, and then it's more like 23 guys. I got the defense. Now it's everybody.
Right.
So Aaron he could watch quarterbacks over here. Maybe in the next drill, he's going to be looking at the linebackers.
Yep.
And maybe the last group he's going to look at now is the secondary. Or maybe he starts with the secondary and then jumps around.
Right. Yeah. I mean, listen, like this is a new spot for him. This is a new opportunity. I think in the beginning he might catch himself maybe too much in the defense, and he'll have to kind of just every day kind of take in just kind of an examination of, okay, where have I been the most, and how can I make sure that I'm spreading myself around and making sure everybody feels my presence.
Do you like the hires at those important positions? And these are guys that we're going to get to know a lot better here in the next couple weeks and months. But you got Wilkes, who's got head coaching experience.
Yep.
They've been calling defensive plays forever, so you can lean on him if he's got any questions from a head coach perspective. Engstrand, he was a very valuable piece of that Detroit offense. I asked Ben Johnson about him at league meetings in Palm Beach, and he said, well, he got involved in everything we were doing here offensively. Passing game coordinator, calling the shots now. And Chris Banjo, talk about energy, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
He was playing when I was playing.
He still can play.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it's cool to see that, guys, that he's giving young guys an opportunity, right? Like, not just Tanner Engstrand, because that's a guy that climbed the ladder, but climbed it pretty quickly, right? He passing game coordinator to now offensive coordinator. He took the same route to Ben Johnson, but Chris Banjo is a guy that, was playing when I was playing. Now he's special teams coordinator. That's a big spot to be at, man. Special teams really changes the game. We've seen that over and over again. Last year, missing kicks, right? There's so many different aspects of the special teams game that are important to win. So, it'll be exciting to see that.
Thanks, man. This was fun. What's going on with you? You got the camp coming up?
Got the camp
back in
coming
California
up,
or what?
yes, sir. So that'll be fun. And I love that those opportunities to kind of see the kids having fun on the field.
And what do you do as far as the camp is concerned? Let us know.
Just it's free. It's free. Everybody gets an opportunity to
Back
get
in
a
Northern
meal.
California, what time?
Hey, Southern California, baby. We it's 10 o'clock, 10 to 2. I appreciate the shout out for me. And, it's just fun. The opportunity to go out there, my old high school, joining with them. And everybody just wants to go out and learn some football. I have some guys coming back as well.
What high school?
Rancho Verde.
And what's the date?
June 7th.
June 7th.
Yes, sir.
So if you're out there in Southern California,
sign up, baby.
Q will take care of you.
Yes.
You can learn from a Jets legend.
Yes,
Thanks, brother.
sir. I appreciate it. Thank you.